shadows of Vanuu Island. The human brain is the most enigmatic organ. It can create the brightest dreams and the most horrifying nightmares. It can make you believe in the unreal and make the unreal seem real. This is the story of a group of friends who went to an exotic island, not knowing that their dreams would quickly turn into nightmares. The airport greeted them with a cold autumn morning. 6 friends, all university students, eagerly awaited their flight to Vanuu Island. They chose this remote corner of the world, hoping to escape the city's hustle and enjoy nature. Thomas, the group's leader, approached the check-in desk and discovered that their tickets, purchased online, had disappeared from the system. "This is impossible," Thomas said to the airport employee. "I'm sorry, but your reservations are not in the system," she replied, smiling nervously. They should have felt the first chill of anxiety then, but youth and excitement for the trip prevailed. Finally, after long arguments, the friends managed to resolve the issue and boarded the plane, albeit a few hours late. They laughed, joked, and discussed their plans for the vacation, unaware of what lay ahead. When the plane landed, they were met by the heat and humidity of the tropical island. They immediately felt the stark contrast with the cold autumn back home. They were greeted by a local guide named Mona, who was to take them to their hotel. Mona was short in stature, but his gaze pierced to the core. He seemed a bit odd to Thomas, but the others paid no attention. On the way to the hotel, they passed through dense jungles, local villages, and ancient ruins that looked like remnants of a long-forgotten world. The hotel they arrived at was small but cozy, situated on the ocean shore. They settled into their rooms and began preparing for their first excursion. On the first night, Thomas woke up to a strange noise. It seemed to him that someone was walking outside his window. He looked out but saw nothing. The morning began with a traditional island breakfast and plans for the day. They decided to visit an ancient temple deep in the jungle. On the way to the temple, they met an old shaman who warned them not to enter the inner chambers of the temple. He said that spirits lived there and did not like to be disturbed. The friends laughed and continued on their way. The ancient temple was majestic and at the same time eerie. It reminded them of long-gone times and unknown rituals. The friends entered the inner courtyard, admiring the craftsmanship of the stone carvings and statues. Suddenly, Peter, one of the friends, heard a whisper. It seemed to him that someone was calling him. Peter stepped away from the group without telling anyone. The whisper led him to a dark passage that led to the temple's underground. He disappeared into the darkness, and no one noticed his absence until evening. When everyone gathered at the temple exit, Thomas noticed that Peter was missing. They started searching for him, but to no avail. As night approached, they had to return to the hotel without Peter. They decided to continue the search in the morning. That night, everyone was haunted by nightmares. Lisa saw herself being dragged into darkness. Oliver heard someone quietly whispering his name, and Eliza felt someone constantly watching her. Waking up in the middle of the night, they realized that not only Peter was missing but also Jack. His things were in place, but he himself had disappeared. The morning brought new fears. Thomas decided to ask Mona for help. The guide agreed to assist and brought them to the shaman they had met earlier. The shaman looked at them and said that dark forces had awakened, and now they were in danger. The shaman suggested performing a cleansing ritual to protect the friends from the spirits. He lit sacred herbs and began chanting ancient spells. During the ritual, Thomas felt a sharp pain in his head and saw visions of Peter and Jack standing in the dark and crying for help. "They are alive but trapped," the shaman said when the ritual ended. "You must find them before it's too late." The friends returned to the temple. This time, they were armed with the shaman's knowledge and determination to save their friends. They found the dark passage where Peter had disappeared and descended into the underground. The dark corridors were filled with fear and uncertainty. They felt as if the shadows were moving behind them, and the whispering grew louder. In the underground, they stumbled upon ancient catacombs where they found Peter and Jack. They were in a trance, their eyes empty, but they were breathing. Suddenly, shadows appeared around them. These were the spirits the shaman had warned about. "They don't want us to take them," Lisa whispered, feeling a cold breath on her neck. The friends tried to drag Peter and Jack out of the underground, but the shadows grew more aggressive. They began to attack, forcing the friends to retreat. At that moment, Thomas remembered the sacred herbs given to them by the shaman. He lit them, and the smoke drove the spirits away long enough for them to pull their friends to the surface. They returned to the shaman with Peter and Jack. The shaman performed a final cleansing ritual, freeing them from the spirit's influence. Peter and Jack gradually came to their senses, although their memories of what had happened in the underground were hazy. After the cleansing, the shaman invited them to stay for a few more days to fully restore their energy and learn more about the island's history and its spirits. The friends agreed, albeit with mixed feelings. The shaman began telling them stories about the island's ancestors, ancient rituals, and sacrifices made to the spirits to maintain the balance between the world of the living and the dead. The spirits you encountered are the souls of those sacrificed many years ago, the shaman explained. They find no peace and remain in this world, seeking revenge for their deaths. The friends began to understand that their nightmares and visions were the spirits' attempts to reach out to them for help. Peter and Jack shared what they had seen in their trance states. They saw scenes from the past where people were sacrificed, and they felt their pain and fear. It was not just horror, it was a feeling of absolute hopelessness. Thomas suggested performing a ritual to free the spirits and help them find peace. The shaman agreed, and together with the friends, began preparing for the ceremony. They gathered all the necessary materials and headed to the temple at sunset. In the dark temple, the friends and the shaman lit candles and sacred herbs. The shaman began chanting, and his voice echoed through the empty walls. The friends stood in a circle, holding hands, and felt the air around them fill with energy. Suddenly, shadows appeared, but this time they were not aggressive. They simply watched as the shaman continued his chant. Gradually, the shadows began to dissipate, and the friends felt the tension lift. When the ritual ended, the temple was filled with light and peace. The next morning, the friends left for home. They were tired and exhausted but happy to be returning alive. However, there was still a shadow of fear in their eyes. They knew they would never forget this horrifying experience. Thomas felt that their journey had changed them forever. They returned to their normal lives, but each day they felt the shadows of Vanuu Island still haunting their dreams, reminding them of the nightmare they had endured together. Sometimes, passing by a mirror, Thomas saw the shadow of Peter or Jack standing behind him, and he realized that some horrors never completely disappear, remaining with us forever. One day, Thomas received a strange package at his address. It had no sender or markings. Inside the package, he found an ancient manuscript written in a language he could not understand. However, some symbols seemed familiar. He had seen them on the walls of the temple on Vanuu Island. He turned to an expert in ancient languages at his university. Professor Lawrence, known for his knowledge of ancient cultures, agreed to help. After several days of research, the professor came to Thomas with alarming news. This manuscript describes a ritual that can not only free spirits but also open gates between the world of the living and the dead, Professor Lawrence said. This is very dangerous, Thomas. Someone or something wants you to perform this ritual. Thomas began to understand that his connection with the island was not over. He gathered his friends and told them about the discovery. They all felt something was wrong. Their nightmares were becoming more frequent and terrifying. The friends decided to return to the island to uncover the truth and put an end to this horror. Returning to the island was filled with fear and uncertainty. They met Mana again, who was surprised by their return. Thomas showed him the manuscript, and the guide turned pale upon seeing it. This should not be here, Mana said. It is very dangerous. They turned to the shaman, who was shocked and troubled. The shaman explained that the manuscript described a ritual that could unleash powerful forces that could disrupt the balance between the world of the living and the dead. You must be very careful, the shaman said. If you do something wrong, the consequences could be catastrophic. The friends decided to perform the ritual under the shaman's guidance. They prepared for the ceremony, gathering all the necessary materials. The ritual was to take place in the temple at sunset, as described in the manuscript. They lit candles and sacred herbs, and the shaman began chanting spells. The air around them filled with energy, and shadows began to appear again. This time they were more aggressive and started attacking the friends. Thomas, holding the manuscript, felt the shadows trying to snatch it from his hands. The shaman ordered him to continue reading, despite the pain and fear. Thomas closed his eyes and continued chanting the spells until he felt something change. Suddenly, the shadows vanished and silence filled the air. Light filled the temple, and the friends felt their fears and anxieties disappear. The ritual was completed, and the balance was restored. They returned home, knowing they were forever changed. Thomas kept the manuscript in a safe place, understanding that this power should not fall into the hands of those who could not control it. The nightmares ceased, and they were able to return to normal life. But each of them knew that their connection to Vanuu Island would never fade. They had become part of this story, part of the balance between worlds. Sometimes, passing by a mirror, Thomas still saw shadows, but now he knew that these spirits had found peace. He realized that life is not just light and darkness, but a balance between them. And this balance would always remind them of itself in the most unexpected moments.